Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my first encounter with the brand Aquastar. Now Aquastar were a Swiss brand from the 1960s known for making proper dive watches, genuine diving tools, which at the time were on the cutting edge of dive watch technology. The man behind the brand, Frederick Robert, was himself a diver as well as a watchmaker. Now he ran the brand until the mid-70s when it was sold to another Swiss company, but ceased trading in 1982, yet another victim of the quartz crisis. But Aquastar are yet another brand being brought back. I believe it's the same people behind Doxa's resurgence over the last 10 years or so are now bringing back Aquastar, slowly releasing model after model from the brand's past. Now they relaunched with the Deep Star chronograph a couple of years ago, but are now going back to the very beginning by reissuing this D60, the watch that was the first to bear the Aquastar name. Now you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by Aquastar. I have been eagerly awaiting my D60 following its FedEx path across the world until it landed here in Sydney last week. They have a launch special on these watches at the moment, which ends at the end of this month, July 2023. So I was keen to get this video live before then. As always, if you're keen on one of these, get in before the price goes up. But the eternal question remains, is it actually any good? Let's flip the camera and find out. Okay, let's go. And let's start with some of the nicest packaging I have seen in quite a while, I'll be honest. I assume they're calling this duck egg blue though, rather than a certain other type of blue. And the black ash box reminds me of the furniture that was everywhere in the 1980s. Inside the box we have the watch presented on a nice cushion. Now, I didn't get the bracelet. They were going to send me all of the different strap options, but they ran out of bracelets, so I can only show you the Tropic strap, and if I lift this little hatch underneath it, you will find the NATO strap with a compass attached to it. Apparently the first 75 orders or something like that get a free compass. It seems to do a reasonable job, by the way, of pointing north. I'll show you the watch on both of the strap options over the course of the video. And the warranty card is as fancy as the box. I've never seen one quite like that before. Only problem is, it's only valid for 12 months, and you know what that means, don't you? But before we inevitably go there, what is this thing? I talked about it being a retro reissue of a watch from the late 50s/early 60s, and indeed, that is exactly what it is, and a handsome wee thing it is too, as you can see. I will of course leave a link to the Aquastar website in the description of the video. I'll also leave a link to an article by Dr. Peter Miller, a man who has written a book about the history of Aquastar watches, if you would like to know more. The D60 is effectively a reissue of an early 60s Aquastar, and a very faithful reissue, as I'm sure you will agree the two watches are almost identical. The first watch to bear the Aquastar name though was in fact this one, and it made it all the way down to 10,916 meters underneath the ocean surface. Admittedly, that was inside a submarine though. But that was then and this is now. Today's D60 has a water resistance rating of 200 meters, perhaps not quite enough for plumbing the depths of the Marianas Trench, but more than enough for most people, I'm sure. What about dimensions? Well, it's not a big watch, but it is still slightly larger than the original. The original was 36mm in diameter, this one is 1mm larger at 37mm. Thickness is 12.6, lug to lug is 46 on the nose. One carryover dimension from the original watch, which perhaps they could have also adjusted upwards by 1mm, is the lug width. This D60 has 19mm lug widths. Weight will of course vary depending on which strap you choose. You're looking at around 80 grams on the NATO or the Tropic. Water resistance, as discussed, is 200 meters. Crystal is a lovely double dome sapphire to mimic the look of the original acrylic, and the movement is definitely one of the standout features here today. It's a La Jouperet G100 top grade. Now unfortunately I cannot show you it, but I can show you this lovely caseback. The caseback is really nice actually, but you will need a special tool if you ever want to take it off. The movement itself is a recently released ETA 2824 sized module, but with different architecture. 24 joules, unidirectional winding, and a 68-hour power reserve. That really is the big selling point of this one. Smaller selling points are a tungsten rotor and the fact that it is adjusted to 4 positions from the factory. I can't take the case back off, but I can show you a picture, once again courtesy of Dr. Miller. As you would expect from a watch based on a watch from the late 1950s/early 1960s, case finish is very, very simple. I hope you can see here there is a consistent horizontal brush on the mid case and a circular brush to the upper lug surfaces. There's a really nice contour to the case which you don't always get on these retro reissues. This one wears very sweetly, especially if you have smaller wrists. The unguarded crown has the Aquastar logo on it. The coin edge bezel is very slim but still manages actually to offer plenty of grip. It's a one-piece bezel rather than a two-piece bezel plus insert. All brushed stainless steel, radially brushed with a Lume pip, and it's bi-directional 120 click. The action is fairly light but fairly pleasant, and everything lines up as it should. Now, I can't show you the Beads of Rice bracelet, unfortunately, but I can show you the Tropic and the NATO. My contact at Aquastar told me that most people were buying this watch on the Tropic or the NATO anyway. The Tropic is nice and soft and flexible, plenty of Aquastar branding at each end. No quick release though, and no drilled lugs, so you will have to get your Bergeon out if you want to swap it for something else. The hardware is neat and also features the Aquastar logo. The NATO is a nice one. It feels like a high quality item both in the hand and on the wrist. Hardware is fully brushed on top but polished on the sides. Once again, the hardware features the Aquastar logo. And there is the compass. Look, I never criticise free stuff, and it seems to do a pretty good job of pointing in the direction of magnetic north. I'm just not sure how many people will actually use it. Maybe it's for those guys who wear their keys on a carabiner outside of their jeans. They would definitely use something like this. Let's have another look at the dial and hands then, faithful as they are to the original watch, and very simple as a consequence. It's a high gloss printed dial with printed 14-odd old radium hour markers, triangle at 12, rectangles at 6 and 9, circles everywhere else, and a simple unbeveled date cutout at the 3 o'clock with a white date wheel. Dial printing is also faithful to the original, Aquastar and Suisse above the pinion, the logo once again, and automatic followed by the depth rating beneath it. Now this watch doesn't feature the words Swiss made on the dial. I guess Suisse is in lieu of that. Some white minute markers are situated around the outer edge, matching the dial text colour. Now the hands are also 1-for-1s of the original, and that means you get that slightly unusual looking squared off hour hand and a very standard sword minute hand, simple second hand as well, with a diamond counterbalance and a lollipop towards the tip. And that's it. There is nothing fancy here at all because there was nothing fancy on the original. It was a proper diver's tool as discussed. 200 meters of water resistance for the early 60s. Very impressive actually. Now the bezel on this one is all brushed and nicely brushed as you can see here from this macro shot. The paint fill is well done and the Lume pip is recessed into the bezel itself rather than a secondary insert. I've seen a fair few retro reissues by this stage of the game. This is undoubtedly one of the most faithful to the original watch. And retro reissue means retro sizing, which means it's going to be too small for some but just right for others. I will show you it on the Tropic strap and the NATO strap here of course, and the NATO with or without that slightly warty edition of the compass. Like I said, some people will be into that, most people won't, but it's free so it doesn't really matter. The NATO isn't actually a bad choice for this one. Only 80 grams, is quite light and it's not going to bobble around on you therefore, and 12.6 is still thin enough that it can take a double pass underneath it with ease with comfort. Now I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference. I've got plenty of watches at or around this size in my collection. Normally the issue with smaller divers isn't the case size or the case shape, it's how legible or otherwise they are because they're small. This one does okay in that regard because it's such a simple design and because it doesn't have a chapter ring shrinking the dial any further. And a couple of pocket shots for you again on the different strap options. I've been wearing this one out and about on the Tropic. It's nice and flexible and not the type that attracts dust and fluff. Of course you can swap this over for something else if you like, but remember 19mm lugs. It does keep the watch nicely proportioned though, and I personally have a few 19mm lug width straps in the house because of my Aquaterra, so I don't object to 19 quite as much as I object to 21. Talking of objections, it's time for the moans and niggles section. What do I not like about the Aquastar D60? Well, I do have a bit of a list today. The Lume is okay, but only just okay. I get it, you're stuck with a printed dial and Fotina old radium because it's a 1950s reissue, and this is by no means the only watch of its kind with underwhelming lume. I'm looking at you, Oris Diver 65. This one looks okay initially, but when I turn the speed up, the printed indices disappear all too quickly, leaving pretty much only the hands at the end of my test. Now, I guess they are the most important part, but yeah, it could definitely have been better. The retainers on the Tropic strap are pretty big and pretty mobile. Now, they do still hold the tail in place, but they could have been a bit more snug for a tighter fit. And for a new old company trading on its history, they should really nail down the history. They refer on their website to this being a reissue of a 1957 watch, but according to Dr. Miller, and who questions a man with a PhD, it's actually a reissue of a slightly later third generation Aquastar from 1960. And then on the Caseback there's an engraving 1963 to 2023, which just muddies the waters even further. And a 1-year warranty should be at least a 2-year warranty if you ask me. The further up the horological food chain you go, the longer the warranties are. And the price of these Aquastars, particularly with a relatively unproven movement, the G100 only launched in 2021, a 2-year warranty would have been twice as nice as a 1-year warranty. And then there is the price. This is the discounted early bird equivalent price as well, by the way, $999 USD on a NATO strap. It's nearly $100 more if you want a Tropic strap. I mean, it's a nice Tropic strap, but I don't think it's that nice. $150 on the bracelet. And you can add $300 US to all of those prices on the 1st of August, by the way. It's such a simple watch by its nature. This style of retro reissue does not have a lot of bells and whistles. No fancy case finishing, no ceramic wave dials, no fancy handsets, not even applied indices. $1,000 on a NATO is a fair old ask today. $1,300 on a NATO is an even bigger ask next week. So it comes down to whether you love the look and whether you buy into the brand's backstory. Perhaps like Dr. Miller, you're a fan of vintage Aquastars. In that case, this watch represents an awesome opportunity to get an almost identical watch on your wrist, but with modern manufacturing and an excellent movement in the back of it. So there you have it. The Aquastar D60 is a really simple little watch, just like it was back in 1957, I guess. With this style of piece, you're going to have to either really love the look or be really into the brand's backstory, because it's definitely not a dollar dazzler, even less so when the price goes up next week. If you want something similar but different, have a look at my review of the Oleg and Vax or the Seiko SPB 185 Steel Master. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in a future video, I hope.